What if your struggle with consistency has nothing to do with willpower and everything to do with the way you see yourself? Today, we are flipping the script on motivation, and I'm going to show you how to become the kind of woman who doesn't just follow through, but learns how to lead herself and her family well. All right, if you find yourself in that place where you have started over more times than you can count, maybe you've gotten the plans, you've gotten the workouts, the meal plans, the Pinterest boards, but you still can't stay consistent, this is likely the thing that is getting in your way. I know you. If you are anything like me, if you are anything like the clients that I work with, you want to get fit, you want to feel good in your skin, but there are times that you have kept falling off track, and maybe you find yourself blaming yourself and feeling like you just weren't trying hard enough, or maybe you didn't want it bad enough. I'm here to tell you that that is likely not really the problem. And what is actually going on is happening in the subconscious, in the way that you view yourself. If you think that you need more motivation, then this is going to dispel that myth for you. It really is truly your current identity and the way that you view yourself that is working against you. I want you to pause and think about that for a moment. What are those little thoughts, those little things that you say that feel so true about you, but really are actually working against you? In fact, the other day, I was just kind of coaching with one of my clients through Voxer, and we were coaching through consistency, ironically, and the whole meal planning and meal prepping. And she said something like, I'm just not good at meal planning, or I'm just not very good at meal prepping. And the way that she said it, it was like, it was so natural. It was so rehearsed that it was just automatic. And to her, she thought she was just telling me the truth or a fact about who she is. But I pointed out to her that that's just a thought, that's a belief that she has about herself. And then we kind of coached through, if you're constantly repeating that, I'm not very good at meal planning or meal prepping, or I can't stay consistent for more than a week, or whatever the story is for yourself, I want you to pause and think about how that's actually playing out for you and the results that you're creating. Do you think repeating that story to yourself, or repeating those thoughts to yourself, or saying that about you is actually helping you, or is it hindering you? I have been there for sure in the past. And I used to really think that it was just willpower, or I just needed to try harder if I wanted to be more successful at really anything in the long term. But the reality is that it's not the willpower, it's not the motivation. Now, sure, willpower can play a part in it, absolutely. And there are definitely things that we can do to strengthen our willpower. But if we're relying on feeling motivated, if we're relying on our ability to just like muscle through it and struggle through it, then it's always going to feel like this uphill battle. I remember so distinctly standing in my kitchen, and I was taking those before pictures again and really feeling like I was such a failure. I couldn't understand how I had the background. I had a degree in exercise science. I was a certified nutrition coach. And yet I still just felt like I was constantly fighting with myself and fighting with my body. Now, I do believe it was the Holy Spirit that whispered. It's because I've been dieting this whole time and calling it a lifestyle that really stopped me in my tracks. But what exactly did that mean? I had to really kind of sit with that and explore. And what I discovered is that it wasn't necessarily the things that I was doing, but it was the way that I was going about it. It was really that heart set and that mindset behind those activities that made it feel more like a diet, that caused me to feel that restriction, and in turn created that food obsession. It was when I started working on my mindset and the stories that I was telling myself, not only about food or my body or even what the number on the scale represents, but when I really started to examine the stories that I was subconsciously telling about myself, that was when everything began to shift and to change. So I'm going to give you three action items that you can take with you today that you can start to apply to really get at the root of it. So the first thing, we always have to start with auditing. We always need to start by bringing some awareness. So what are the stories that we tell ourselves? And initially, you might not realize that this is a story that you have, or that these are just thoughts or beliefs that you have. I know for me, in the beginning of really diving in and doing this thought work, I believed so many of those things. Like, it was just like, this is the truth of the matter. I was just reporting the news. But it wasn't until I really got curious and I started to just kind of play with, like, what if this actually is just a story? How do I know that this is the truth? Like, would other people around me say the same things about me? So the first step is to audit. Audit the story that you are telling you about yourself. So this looks like maybe spending some time journaling and just like, what are those things? Like, if you were going to describe yourself to somebody else, what are those things you would tell them? And I want you to think about, like, what are the good things that you would maybe tell them? What are the things that you might be embarrassed to share, or the things that you don't want to tell people? You just want to start to bring some awareness to those things that you are thinking so that we can really start to pinpoint that and change it. Now, I'm not asking you to go from having like one thought or one story or one belief over here. Maybe it's like a super negative one that doesn't make you feel very great, one that certainly doesn't lead to actions that are aligned with your goals. We're not asking you to go from there to having a complete opposite belief. In fact, if we try to do that, usually that's where we're met with that resistance, and it can really kind of get us fighting with ourselves more. But it's just, how do we inch ourselves along? How do we make it a little bit more neutral? And so some things that we can say is, I am learning how to meal plan, or I'm learning how to meal prep better. I can learn how to be more consistent, right? I can learn to be more disciplined. So whatever that particular thought is for you, once we start to audit it, once we start to have some awareness around the story, the next part of that auditing really is starting to lean in and question those thoughts and those beliefs and that story. Is that 100% true for you in every single area, or is it just in this one area? Now, the good news is that likely you're going to find that you maybe have had some success in a different area where you're super consistent, or you don't have a problem being disciplined. The beautiful thing about that is that we can lean on that bit of your identity or that bit of your self-concept and start to apply that into the arena of food and fitness, exercise habits, all of those types of things. Now, the second thing you're going to do is you want to start casting votes for that future self, or for that new identity, that new self-concept that you are wanting to build. So in step one, we're auditing, we're getting some awareness, we're really starting to kind of look at these stories or these thoughts and these beliefs. You're probably going to have some good, some bad, some ugly, some embarrassing. That's all fine. And then we want to start questioning. So that's the second part of step one. But now we want to think about, who is this identity, or who is that version of myself that I see when I see myself at my goal? So if you have a specific goal weight, if you have a specific target, maybe you're wanting to run a marathon, or you're wanting to lift a certain amount of weight, or whatever that is, when you close your eyes and you imagine yourself in that future, who is that? Who is that version of yourself? What are the daily actions that she's taking? What are the habits that she has? What is the kind of routine that she has patterned her life around? And then start to kind of think about, what are the things that maybe she is thinking about herself? Or it might be easier for you to think, are you going to think about her? Or if you know somebody that is similar to that version of yourself, what are the thoughts that you have about that person? And then start to write those out. And then that step two is, how do we start to consistently cast votes for that future self, for that version of us that's already reached the goals, in those small daily actions? So it could be literally just as small as maybe leaving a couple extra bites on the plate, or, maybe it's taking a pause before you go and you grab the cookie or you grab the glass of wine at the end of the day. This does not have to be, these huge actions. Of course, there are going to be those big rocks that are really going to be the big movers. But the reality is that most of our success in any fitness goal, really any goal ever, is going to be small daily action items done consistently over time. Now, the third step in this is to really work on anchoring this new identity or this new self-concept. So again, it might be something like, I'm somebody who plans my meals. I'm somebody who eats the food that I planned for the week. I'm somebody who moves my body every single day. In fact, after reading Atomic Habits, I know I reference that book a lot, but I think that there's so many great little nuggets in there. But one of the things that really stuck out for me after reading that book was this idea that I don't really have to think about exercising or moving my body in some way every single day, even if it's just getting out for a walk or maybe doing some stretching or, some mobility work, whatever that is. That's just a part of who I am now. That's a part of this self-identity, this self-concept that I have created. And now I don't really have to fight with myself. That doesn't mean that I always feel motivated, that I always feel excited, that I always want to go exercise, but it's kind of become this non-negotiable because it's so ingrained in how I view myself. And it wasn't until I think that really solidified for me subconsciously. This was something that happened over getting the reps of just showing up and doing the workout or doing the movement or committing to, other habits. But it was once that became a part of like how I viewed myself, that's where I think all of that resistance, all of that need for willpower or that need to feel motivated, that just kind of fades away because it's so much a part of who you are that you can't really see. It's like almost that it's more uncomfortable not to do the thing than to do the thing. And once you reach that point, that is where it just becomes automatic and you really don't have to think about it. Of course, you do still kind of fight with yourself about it from time to time, and that's okay. But either way, you are still going to do it. And what this creates when we really start to lean into that identity and that self-concept is we start to feel more confident. We start to feel more capable. We are consistent without having to fight with ourselves. And there's this new level of kind of calm that comes in when we start to trust ourselves that we're going to show up, that we're going to follow through just the same way that we do for everybody else. And when we start to show up in our lives every single day in all of those little moments from this place, that is when radical change begins to happen. So there we have it. This is a super short, super sweet episode. This is kind of one of those snack size episodes, if you will. But to recap, the first step is that auditing. So we need to get some awareness around the story that we're telling ourselves and that we're believing about ourselves. The next thing we want to do is we really want to flesh out that future version of ourselves. So when you imagine yourself at whatever goal it is that you're working on, what are the daily actions and habits that that version of you is taking? How is she showing up? What are maybe the thoughts that you have about yourself? Or if you can't access that, think about somebody else that you admire that has maybe reached this specific goal or has had some success in the arena of fitness. And what are the things that you think about her? And how can you start to believe that and think that about yourself? That might come from, I'm somebody who fill in the blank, right? Sometimes that's a little bit easier to access than, I'm consistent, I'm dependable. Sometimes that can create some resistance, especially if you are believing that you're not consistent and you're not dependable. So those are the 3 steps. I hope that this blesses you. I hope that it encourages you in your fitness journey today. I would love to hear how the show is impacting you. And if you feel like this episode would be a blessing to somebody else in your life, then please go ahead and share this as well. And of course, as always, if you are listening to the show and you are really getting some good things from this, but you still feel like you would really benefit from working with somebody more in depth, then I want to encourage you to reach out. I've got a couple different options. We can either look at the one-to-one if that's something that you think would be the best fit, or if going into more